There are some songs that are so iconic that I only have to say a few of the words from the lyrics and you will know immediately what I'm referring to. Like, London's calling to the faraway towns, or should I stay or should I go now? Listen, you're lucky I'm not actually singing those lyrics. Well, The Clash, the 1970s punk band who wrote those songs, are probably one of the most famous bands ever. And my guest today is the bass player, Paul Simonon. Paul was literally a poster boy for the British punk scene, and The Clash conquered the world with their rock, reggae and punk swagger. And remember that front cover of an album where you got a man smashing his guitar in fury on the stage? Well, that is Paul Simonon. Now, it might be 50 years since punk first exploded on the scene, but just the other day, Paul was playing along with the Gorillaz, Damon Albarn and a whole roster of stars to a crowd of 70,000 people in London. You know when they say, never meet your heroes? Well, full disclosure, I first saw Paul and The Clash when I was 16 years old in London, and I thought he was the coolest dude ever. And I'm not alone. Now, don't worry, no guitars were harmed in the making of this podcast, but what we do find out is how Paul got the travel bug originally, what life was like on the road away from the actual gigs, and how Paul spent several weeks in prison after a protest at sea. This is a lifelong traveller, and yet ultimately a Londoner through and through. This is Travel That Made Me, with Paul Simonon. Okay, so this is about travel that made you. And I want to ask about kind of a travel experience that you think was the most defining travel experience for you, that kind of shaped who you are.
I reckon in 1965, my mother told me that my stepfather had won a scholarship to study music in Italy, and she said, "Yeah, we're travelling next year." And well, I was thinking, well, Italy. My geography is pretty good, but then I remember some kids in school. I told them I was going away to Italy, and they did say, "Well, are you going to go by Cowboy Land?" I was thinking. Yeah, I am actually. Yeah, I'm going to go by Cowboy Land, which obviously, in a strange way, I did, but I'll explain a bit further.
Okay.
So we travelled from Brixton, went on the ferry and arrived in Firenze, stopped off for a bit, and we stayed in a hotel, had pizza, never had pizza before in my life. My mum said I could have red wine because Italian boys drink red wine. But she didn't know that it was watered down. So apart from being drunk along with everybody else, we then checked into our hotel. Then the parents went out to look for a place to rent. And we was on the top floor of this hotel, a bit bored. And there was a big market going on below, a street market. And I dared my brother to see, what if I tipped this basin of water into the crowd below? He went, "You won't do that." And I said, "Watch." And the suddenly screams and yelps from downstairs, thundering up the staircase with people banging on the door. And then it all went quiet. Peeked out the window, there's all people really pissed off. Moments later, stepfather turned up with mum and said, "Right, we've got to leave." And as we came out, there was like police there and these really angry, irate people from the market. And then we had to go and stay in another hotel.
And that, in a way, what reflects your rebellious attitude?
Well, I got into a lot of mischief growing up in Brixton because I realised one day going to school, you know what, I don't need to go to school, I think I'll go and see my aunt in West Norwood. So I sort of really attended school sometimes, but mostly made my own decisions of what I was going to do that day. This is after my dad left. My dad was really strict. He was a Sunday painter. He did lots of different jobs. He was in the army, so he sort of brought me and my brother up like we was in the army.
He was in the army, but he was also a member of the Communist Party.
He was, yeah. Well, I used to go to, because I was brought up a Catholic, used to go to Sunday school. And then one day he said, right, we're not going to be Catholics anymore, we're going to be communists. So I was thinking, I won't get a chance to finish my paper mache crucifixion scene at school. And I was given a ban the bomb badge. And that's it, never went to Catholic school again. Or church or stuff like that.
So you grew up in, I mean, once you'd kind of, I think you were travelling around an awful lot, weren't you, as a kid?
As a kid, yeah. I lived in Thornton Heath, Colshorton, Ramsgate, Canterbury, Ladbroke Grove, Bury St Edmunds, Watersfield, and back to Brixton again. But Italy was really, that was sort of so exciting. Because it was like I never had olives before, and obviously drinking wine was like a joy. And then my mum said, "Right, well, you both you boys have got to go to school," and I knew that people of my age, you have to wear a smock with a big bow here. I said, "Mum, I'm not wearing that. We're from Brixton, Mum," and she understood, and she said, "Okay, well, I'll teach you at home." So she'd teach us for half an hour and then send me out with some cash to go and see a film. And that's when I started watching spaghetti westerns. Because they just started coming out. And so, yeah, I got really into...
So you were watching spaghetti westerns in Italy?
In Italy, yeah.
In Italian?
Yes, in Italian.
Which is the original language they were in, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Which was a bit of a shock because when I got back to London, I caught up with my mates, and they said, "Oh, there's this song come out. It's called Clint Eastwood or Lee Van Cleef," and I went, "That's funny. I've just seen films about that." And they said, "Oh, no, it's this guy called Lee Perry." And I heard it, and it was like I had been to Cowboy Land.
What can I ask you? What was your how much of an influence was your dad on you, do you think?
Complete influence. Basically, he was... My grandfather is from Liège, and the French part of Belgium. And in the First World War, the family had to leave there because the city of Liège resisted the German advance, and the Germans took a toll on the citizens. So they escaped, and they arrived in Elephant Castle. And I think my uncle, he was 10 years old, and my granddad was about 6. They arrived in Elephant Castle, and then my dad, he was born in Camberwell. His mother died at birth, so he never knew his mother. And then he was sent to secondary schools, boarding schools rather, and then he had to try and get away from his grandfather, who was really hardcore strict. So he lied about his age, and he joined the Royal Fusiliers and was stationed at the Tower of London. Wow! And then they were amalgamated with the Buffs, East Kent Regiment. This was before national service. He was supposed to go to Korea, but at last minute they were diverted to go to Kenya. And the plane that went to Korea crashed and killed everybody on board. So yeah. So
there would have been no you, basically.
Well, it's not much of me anyway. No. Maybe half.
Yeah. Wow. And what about his personality? You said he was very strict.
Yeah, he was really strict, and like he brought us up like we was in the army. You know, it's like before bedtime you have to stand to attention for inspection. But on the other side of it, he'd take me to see films like Zulu or Von Ryan's Express, war films, and he was obsessed by the Napoleonic period, and always sort of said, yeah, this was the height of men's fashion. So yeah, so he was a big influence. So when he left, that was really difficult.
And you got on then really well
with my dad. Yeah. It's like, well, I sort of ended up being sent to live with him in Ladbroke Grove with his Irish girlfriend, who used to sing Irish rebel songs in the kitchen and in the local pubs.
Wow. So you had those two backgrounds, Brixton and Ladbroke Grove, which are both parts of London. So, I mean, we've talked about your childhood, but I'd almost say to you now, if you had to think of a childhood travel-related experience, what would it be?
I would say it was travelling to Italy, because it was visiting different countries on the way there, and experiencing being in Italy as a child and going scrumping with the local blokes, and also the scooters, the suits. There was a style there that was interesting, and also I got adopted by these Italian teenage girls who, because I was English, they wanted to improve their English. So they'd ask me questions, and I'd say da 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 in English, and they adopted me like I was sort of like their pet. So if I wanted that ice lolly, they'd get it for me.
And then you used to hang around Brixton quite a lot with your mates.
Yes.
When you were how old then? How old were we talking?
I was probably about seven or eight.
Oh, okay, fine.
That was before going to Italy. Italy was 1966. Then, I used to hang out with my mates in the Brixton area. Went to school round there. Play on the bomb sites. Throw bricks at the kids on the other side of the street, and they throw bricks back. In fact, I've still got a dent in my head where a brick landed. Just get up to mischief. Really, nothing serious, but just nicking.
Yeah.
Things.
Okay. And then you kind of grew up around Ladbroke Grove. You got interested in kind of reggae music?
Well, reggae, I used to always hang out in Brixton. I used to hang out with my mates, and I'd go to his house after school. My dad had already left, and my stepfather had no power over me. So I'd go and hang out at a mate's place, and he and his mum would cook up chicken, rice and peas, and we'd listen to this music. It was sort of like bouncy music, and it was like ska, and that later developed into rock steady. It was like a whole nother world. I don't know what he thought when he came to my mum's house and had shepherd's pie, but yeah.
So that was a big influence on you musically, and that's the kind of way you played when you first started.
Yeah, I'd say one thing. There's a common theme here. Is that I remember in those days, 64. Everybody was obsessed about cowboys, and on the bomb sites we'd all be cowboys and running around with toy pistols and stuff. But there's a group of West Indians who used to hang out on the corner, and they had hats and fancy suits, and they'd always be on the corner, and they looked like cowboys. And they were black cowboys. I'd never seen a black cowboy in the film before, but we had real ones on the corner of the street. And then one of them adopted me as his spa, and he would send me to Snooks to get some cigarettes or whatever for him. And
fashion or clothing was a big part of your life. Look at you now, and it was for the band. And I think you influenced the band, but it goes back in a way, does it, to your childhood and looking at people like that and seeing the way they dressed?
Well, it's like I mentioned, the guys standing on the corner. They look really flash, and it's like, we all had second-hand clothes, but always aspired to have sort of some fancy trousers and a jacket and stuff. Also it was the time of the mod movement too, and then that evolved into the skinhead movement, which is another defining part of, the trim of your trousers has to be so high. You need Dr. Martens. You not monkey boots. There's all this sort of, it was you had to be very choosy.
A detail, is that important?
Well,
that
was the detail. Yeah. How high your trousers were from your boot.
Yeah, but I'm kind of thinking like it's kind of weird in a way because most of the people think you're a musician, but I suspect that the visual is very much what defines you as well.
I suppose so. I mean, I don't go down the road in my pajamas. Well, not yet.
But you care about how you dress.
I think it's important. It's sort of, I suppose it's like gives you sort of an armour in some ways.
Yeah. And you were influential in how the Clash dressed.
Well, I didn't tell anybody what to wear, but I suggested things or just wore them myself. I mean, in the early days of the Clash, it's like because I was at art college not for very long, but I was interested in people like Jackson Pollock and Rauschenberg. And so with our second-hand clothes, because we couldn't buy the stuff from Vivian, the Malcolm shop, because otherwise we looked like the Sex Pistols.
Right, they were Malcolm McLaren, who was the manager of the Sex Pistols, yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
and they had the
Vivian
shop, so we'd buy sort of second-hand clothes down the market, and then we'd splatter them with paint, Jackson Pollock style. And that was like our first early look.
Right. Okay, so sticking with travel, now obviously you know the whole story about the Clash, you've talked about it loads of times, but I'm intrigued because you go on tour with the Clash and you're seeing all these amazing countries and all this kind of stuff. What was that? What are you in your early 20s then?
Yeah.
What was that like? The travel aspect of it.
Well, it's really exciting because and I would recommend it to any young person, is get in a band and see the world rather than the army. But it was like, well, it's the shared experience that everybody would go, well, look at that, or isn't this amazing, or have you tasted that, or, you know, I sort of found it culturally really exciting, all the places we went to. I can't think of one in particular. But they're all just, you know.
So but it must have been really intense as well. You're flying to these places, like what, the States, I guess, a lot, Europe.
The States was a bit later,
right?
But in the beginning, it was mostly around Great Britain, and a couple of times in Europe. But it's mostly around Great Britain, up and down the north.
So if we're talking about travel, then travel in that sense, or with the band in Britain, was just as important.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, if you want a memorable moment, nobody would play in Belfast because it was the Troubles. It was a war zone really, and somebody said, "Well, why don't we?" It had been suggested that we go and play in Belfast. And as you're young, you go, we were going to play there, yeah. And so we went to Belfast, and we stayed at the Europa Hotel. At the time, was the most bombed hotel in Europe. And we were supposed to do a concert there. The insurance company pulled out, and all the local kids that come to see the Clash were sort of like causing trouble with the army. Sort of lying in the road, stop the sort of like army jeeps zooming around, and they all came up to the hotel and were outside the hotel, and this was a really difficult moment because we came out to speak to them, and they said, "Why aren't you playing?" And it was like, well, the insurance company has pulled out, and that is the reality. But they found a student place that we could play, and so we went there and did do a show, and there was lots of people that formed bands, and there were people that from Protestants and Catholics all in the same hall, and a lot of them all went off and formed bands after that show.
Really, that was that influential, do you reckon?
Yeah.
Wow. And also, I think your first gig. In Guildford, was quite interesting as well because you
yeah. Well, Bernie Rhodes, our manager, he said, "Right, you boys, you need to go out and do some live shows." So he said, "Right, we're going down to Guildford." So we drove down to Guildford to play in this pub. We set up, and then the doors were open, and loads of blokes turned up, and we started playing. And then after about 5 minutes, there was a massive fight, and they all went outside, and so basically the hall was left empty. And they're all like blokes from the army base, so they're all punching each other up outside. We were playing inside. And as we finished our set, our manager went up. There was a guy at the bar, and our manager went up to him and said, well, what do you think of the band? And the guy looked up, and he went, what band? Maybe he was drunk, or I don't know. Anyway, that was our first show.
Right. Okay, and were you happy with the performance? Was it all right?
No, I left half a glass of beer on my amp, and it toppled over and killed off the sound. So that was a lesson.
Okay. Anyway, it went better after that, didn't it? But
it improved, and then we did some shows with the Pistols that were really exciting. We played in Sheffield, a pub called the Mucky Duck. And I hadn't been playing bass for very long, and I had the notes painted on the neck, so I knew where to put my fingers for the song. And then there was one song that I was supposed to start first, and it goes dun 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 dun. But I went and
Just carried on.
yeah, I just carried on. But it was all fine. It
Wow.
was like
And
learning
obviously,
lessons.
Yeah, then it. But I saw you. Do you remember when you played Notre Dame Hall in Leicester Square?
I know it very well, and I'll tell you why I know it well. It is because my grandfather, when he was a young man, used to deliver coal to the Notre Dame in Leicester Square
Wow.
when he was living in Elephant Castle.
And do you remember the gig?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I do remember the gig, and there was quite a good crowd there.
It was intense. It was like a load of people. I've got to say, I think I was the only non-white person there. I've got to be honest, and I was a bit freaked out because it was just the kind of mosh pit thing, the whole thing about being really intense, wasn't it? But that was your crowd at that point.
Yeah, and. Yeah, well, as there's a whole mix of people there with different backgrounds. I don't recall any Teddy Boys being there, but the Pistols were really good that night.
Yeah. Okay, so the one thing I do want to ask you is, when you're on tour, a lot of bands just basically are kind of well protected, and they're not allowed out. They just fly over,
Not allowed out.
do the sound check. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
just stay in the hotel. Did you do that?
No, not at all. Mick, he grew up with his nan, and his nan always served him sort of like tea time on a tray while he was watching telly. So when we, especially around America, Mick would stay in the hotel room and have his tea on a tray, room service, and me and Joe would go out on the town and find out. And after doing a concert, everyone would come backstage and we'd speak to everybody, say, well, what's happening here? And they say, oh, well, you should go to this place or this club. And so we'd take them up and go with them. And loads, actually all the time we went out on the town,
And that way, you get to know local people.
Yeah,
which is what travel's about.
And what's happening in the town, and what to avoid, and and where's a good place to eat, or I don't know, just lots of things, or the history of the place,
And did you do that? I mean, did you have that attitude to wherever you went, that you wanted to explore the country, the culture, as well, as much as just be there?
Yeah, no, we were really open-minded. We wanted to see and find out where we are and what's happening and what music comes from this place,
Yeah.
And Chicago, it's like Bo Diddley's hometown, and we did quite a few. Our first tour of America was, in fact, with Bo Diddley.
Wow.
And when we played Chicago, he introduced us to Jerome, who was his harmonica player. And it was like interesting history of music. And
I've got to ask you about the time in New York, the Palladium, I think it was. The iconic picture, which is the cover of the London Calling album, you smashing that bass. It has become the poster picture, if you like, of that era. What led you to smash the bass?
Well, when we were travelling around Great Britain, we noticed that seated venues caused friction between the audience and the security, making people to stay and sit while the show's taking place. We played at the Finsbury Park. We did a concert there, and it got out of hand with the security, and everyone started smashing the seats up and piling them up on stage. So from that point on, we sort of said, right, any place that we play, it's got to be not seated. And obviously, by the time we got to New York, some of the information got left behind. And so when we arrived and went on stage, there was the same issue, people having issues with the bouncers and security. And start pulling chairs around, and the sound was rubbish, and I don't know, I just got angry.
You lost it?
Yeah, I lost it, and as I always do, I sort of take it out on my own things.
Right. And then,
it's a habit.
yeah, I mean, that's a nice bass though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was a really good one. And the one I had to play after that was like really thin, and that was just So anyway, that's a lesson.
I mean, you've been playing bass for decades, right? Are you in? I mean, I'm got to say, play bit bass. I'm in love with it. I'm in love with everything about it, the sound, everything. Do you have that relationship with bass?
Absolutely. That's the thing I picked up from reggae music. It's like the bass line is almost like how you're dancing, or the way you could dance it if you moved it in this way. And it's like footsteps. It's how dance steps is how I see it really. And that's the good thing about Jamaican music. You can hear the bass line to practice along, whereas with sort of Rolling Stones and a lot of groups of that period, it's quite hard to detect what was going on.
Yeah, yeah.
But
and now when you're playing it, I mean,
I just feel it. I know where to go with it, and it's like, and sometimes it's like you can work out a bass line, and just go, just stop there. Now I go again. And there, and it's like, it's breathing space, and it's good. It's like not so much work.
Well, that's true. Well, also, I think space is as important to bass as the actual bass.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's leaving those space elements for somebody else to do something to fill it in. Like I said, it's like footsteps to dance to.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I'm supposed to be sticking to the script here about all the different, the actual experiences that triggered certain things. I mean, in a sense, you've talked about your childhood. You talk about what travel experience defined you. We've talked about, in many ways, it strikes me that in terms of travel, it's coming back home that actually really makes sense. It resonates with you.
Yeah, well, it's true in lots of ways. I mean, like recently, the first COVID, I was in Paddington painting the local streets, which, by the way, looked amazing because nobody was allowed out, and it looked like a theatrical set around here. And then there was a break, and I ran off to Mallorca because there was a fishing village, a deserted fishing village, and I wanted to go there and paint. And when I got there, there was a guy there. He's like he's the only person that lives there. He's a local fisherman, and he'd sort of say, I'm the mayor here. I suppose, well, you're the only bloke here, I guess you are, And he'd take me out fishing in the middle of the night, and then suddenly you're out on the boat, and then suddenly you can't see land anymore because his place was the only one that had a light on because there's nobody living there, and that's a good experience. And then after being there for a couple of months, then I went into another village and met up with some guys and started a band busking in the street. And then eventually...
Did people recognise you when you were busking in the street?
No.
Brilliant.
No, they didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
And then my passport was running out. I came back to London and started like a music project over here. But
it was the coming home.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. In Mallorca, people are so civilised and respectful of each other. Going, well, this is everyone says thank you, and well, in Spanish, but and I sort of missed London and like how everybody walks around with like some attitude, and I sort of missed that. It was too nice in Mallorca.
Right, interesting. It's too sanitised for you.
Well, it wasn't sanitised as such, but it was just very civilised, and whereas here it's just like there's rubbish all over the streets. There's people sleeping in doorways. It's like it's not pleasant.
Now, I want to ask you about a travel experience which didn't go quite as planned, and I'm thinking about the one where you snuck onto a ship, or you're on a ship.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this friend of mine, Frank Hewitson, he's like active coordinator of action for Greenpeace, and I've been asking him for quite a few years. Say, look, Frank, next time you're going, can I come along? And then one day he said, I've been thinking about it. Yeah, you know what? I'm thinking you'd be suitable for it because it's on a ship, and you're used to being on the tour bus, and but you haven't got any skills, so you have to do the lowest job. I said, fine, what is that? He said, well, you have to be assistant to the chef, and you have to clean the toilets. Going like, fine, I've never had a sense of smell, so that's fine with me. And then we went out and we were trying to find the Leif Erikson that had left somewhere in the Mediterranean. They turned their signal lights off, their navigation light off, so we couldn't really track them. So we sailed down to the Bay of Biscay for a couple of days. Actually, I will say one thing. The first week, there was nobody came to the kitchen because everybody was seasick. I was fine. I coped. But anyway, we went to Bay of Biscay. From there, then we went over towards Nova Scotia, and then we came back, and there was a sighting from the top of Scotland. So we raced towards there, and then we were heading to, and we did catch up with them as they're going towards Greenland.
Because this was about nuclear submarine. What was it that you were actually doing then?
What they were doing, the oil rig was going to Greenland, and what our purpose was to ask them, board the Leif Erikson, saying, what are your oil response plan? What is your oil response plan in case there's a leak? That's all we want to know.
Right.
And they asked in London, and they were kicked out. And so when we arrived, when we spotted the oil rig, at this point the Danish Navy were shadowing us, and the year before apparently they'd stormed the Greenpeace ship. So me and the assistant chef I said, look, when they come in, I'll wait here with a frying pan and we'll get each one as they come in. But anyway, that didn't happen. And we got up very early in the morning, left on about 12 ribs and raced towards the oil rig. And the Danish Navy was suddenly caught unawares and tried to cut us off, but they were way too late. And we climbed up to the top, which is very high. You don't want to drop in because it's freezing cold, and you wouldn't last long. And we got on board and we went into the main offices and we asked about the oil response plan. And they said, well, you better get back to your ship because you'll be arrested for piracy. And I said, well, we only want to know about the plan. And then they said, well, you'll just be arrested and the police will come and get you. And then helicopters arrived, and then we got arrested and thrown into the prison in Nuuk. And as we arrived, prisoners were going, F off Greenpeace, banging, bang, F off Greenpeace. And then we went into our section, and there was some other local people there. And one of them, he came up to me and said, I want to fight you. And I was thinking, why is he picking on me? Frank's much bigger. And I said, why? And that sort of dissipated. And why are you in? So there was a bit of tension in our wing, and when you're in prison, you actually get paid, not very much. You get like a fiver or not even that, maybe a couple of pounds. So as I carried on my duties from the ship. So now I was the head chef
in prison.
In the prison, yeah. So the food that would come, it was all right. It's fine, but it wasn't that great. And so I asked the governor of the prison. I said, "Can I have permission to go to the supermarket and get some stuff?" And because I had this money from everybody on our wing, and he went, "Yeah, okay, you can go, but you have to go with an armed guard."
Well, fair enough. You are in prison.
Yeah. So I went to the local supermarket with an armed guard, got supplies what everybody wanted, and cooked spaghetti vongole or whatever they wanted in our wing, and that was open to the inmates on the locals that were on.
Oh wow!
You know.
How long did you spend in prison?
Oh, only about like 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Right.
It was,
Was it grim or was it okay?
I kept myself busy.
Yeah.
But there were some people that were just like staring at the ground, couldn't believe they were in prison. But I kept busy. I did paintings on the wall. I was cooking all the time. And one time when everybody went out into the exercise yard, I decided to stay behind. And the guy that wanted to fight me was in the room too. So I said, so what do you miss? He said, I miss my girlfriend. And I said, yeah, me too. So we were sort of
Bonded.
equal then.
Yeah, it was all right. By the way, that was 2011. It wasn't that long ago, was it? I think it was 15 years, 14 years
Something
ago.
like that.
Wow. And you were really committed to the cause, were you?
Yeah, I wanted to contribute, not like... I wanted to physically be there and contribute, you know. And it's quite interesting because, like, before going on the Greenpeace thing, I did a tour with the Gorillas, and they had an album called Plastic Beach. And Jamie and Damon, they said, Paul, can you come up with a look for the band? Yeah, we're going to be U-boat commanders. And so we all had striped tops. I'd changed on the tour bus, put red bulb ins. There was rules, you couldn't get off the tour bus unless you had a striped top. So by the time we got arrested, I had the gear on already. So, like, you know, like... But, you know, like prison with the stripes.
So we go back again. There's that theme about how, again, fashion comes in, or the clothing and all that kind of stuff. And there was another one like that. You went to Moscow, right?
Yeah, well, Mick and Joe were paid for by the record company in 1978 or something like that to go to Jamaica and get some inspiration. And well, they wanted to go there, but the record company wouldn't pay for me. And I was really pissed off about that. So I thought, well, I'll show them. What I'll do is like, and I went on a package holiday, and to Russia. So I went to Moscow for 3 days, and then 4 days in St. Petersburg, at the height of the Russian winter, and went to all the museums. Went to see, in St. Petersburg. It was interesting. I saw the battleship Aurora that fired the first shot for the start of the revolution. It was a bit like Venice there, but covered in snow and waterways and stuff. And probably one of the good things was, well, it kept me warm. It's like all the tourists were staying in this hotel, all on package holidays from different places. And there's long benches. Everyone was sort of fed a meal, and then everyone would leave. But everyone would leave their shots of vodka behind. So I'd just go around and go, hey, this is good, and top up, and then go out into the cold and walk around.
Wow. I've never been to Russia, okay, right? And again, you have this image of a country. Now, did you get to talk to local people and realise that
yeah, well, the thing I noticed that there was a lot of the tourists, I noticed they were wearing really ill-fitting clothes. And I said, what happened to your clothes? And they said, some of the locals, they offered us quite a lot of money for our Levi's, for our jeans.
Wow.
So there's a trade going on.
And they were wearing their clothes.
Yeah, they just sort of like sold their jeans off and exchanged trousers in the street or wherever, I don't know.
And also that trip influenced, again,
well, I came back with lots of badges, lots of stars, and that sort of became sort of an important symbol for the Clash.
I want to ask you a question about if you had to pass on an experience to someone else, a travel experience that you've had, or a country that you've been to, or culture that you've seen, what would it be?
Well, I'd first say to any young person is learn an instrument, get in a band, and have guitar will travel. And it's like, it opened my world up in lots of ways, and still does. And it's really nice because it's a shared experience with other people in the band. I would say that.
And you love Japan as well, though, I do know that.
Japan is very special. The first time I went there, which might have been about 1983, 82, it was like going to another planet, and it was there's no English was written up anywhere, which has changed. There are English signs now on the trains and stuff, and the culture, the food, the art. And the fashion, like a lot of the young kids, and were really stylish. There's the famous girls from Harajuku, and there was all the guys at the Rockers. It's a good mishmash of influences.
Yeah. And they're musical influences as well on you, aren't they? Because I've noticed, because I've heard you DJ a couple of times, and you'll play like cumbia from Mexico and Latin America.
Yeah.
Everywhere you go, you'll come back, and Japanese music, you'll come back.
Yeah, well, they've got cumbia bands in Japan. They've got reggae bands, you name it, heavy metal band, any music genre. They've got somebody playing it.
Yeah,
and it's fascinating how they take that in, and it's interesting because at the end of the day, it's an island as well. Same as the UK.
And do you think there's a bit of a jackdaw about you? The fact that you do go around the world and you pick up little bits of cultures and stuff? Or
yeah, I soak it all in. And, recently, like a friend of mine, Jason Mell, a couple of years ago, he introduced me to sort of... I was aware of cumbia, but I didn't know it that well. And he plays it all the time. And I found that really interesting. But then... DJing, I didn't want to have the same records as him, so I had to find my own way. But then I discovered sonaderos, and they're from Mexico, and it's like they use cumbia, but they do things like that. It's like they're put on a record, and you think it's like 45 that's put on 33. It's going, and it's like quite reggae, the sound. And they're really inventive, and that's what I play a lot of.
Just looking back at the whole thing, what do you think? If I had to ask you, what is it about travel that you love the most?
Coming back to Paddington.
I've come. That's so weird. It's so amazing, isn't it? You get people who just love the notion of travel. They love, you have been so lucky in that you have travelled everywhere. You get an instant pass into all these cultures, and yet when it comes back to it, it's coming back to Blighty, coming back to London specifically as well.
Yeah, well, that's I've grown up here all my life, really. So I'm definitely what you call a proper Londoner.
I mean,
blimey.
Well, you can tell as well from the influence from your father. Going and then your background in Brixton, Ladbroke Grove, everywhere, and then travelling around you, and then you lots of travelling, and yet there's something about home.
Yeah, it's like, well, you can sort of restock your batteries and then go off again. It's sort of it's a time to sort of soak everything of what you'd experienced, and then. It's like picking up records. That's the thing I liked about travelling through America is going to second-hand stores and buying old records that nobody wanted. It's like, yeah, but this is like Bo Diddley record. It's like cost a fortune in London. It's like, what, $2 here? That was one thing that was interesting in that period going to America, is that we're given wages, but the moment we got to America, our wages had doubled because like there was $2 to the pound.
Right.
So suddenly we're like really, well, especially shopping in second-hand stores.
Yeah.
Suddenly you're quite wealthy.
Yeah.
There'd be like Gene Vincent jacket, and you go, wow, that's only like $5.
Yeah, I noticed that. You call them second-hand, whereas people today call it vintage. But you call it second-hand.
Well, I'm vintage too.
Yeah.
I'm not second-hand.
And just finally, as vintage,
Yeah.
do you think you're a different person to the kid who was hanging around bomb sites in Brixton or whatever, or the one growing up who was, very dapper and good-looking and young guy? Do you think you're very different now?
No, I've still got the same outlook. I'm always aware of who's around me and who's over there and what's going on over there. Self-preservation.
Self-preservation.
Yeah.
So it's not just about being aware of something interesting over there. It's actually protecting yourself as well.
Yeah. That's like wearing a suit. It's like an armour. It's like if you've got some sort of look. Well, you just look at Lee Van Cleef. You go, bloody hell, I ain't going near him.
Dangerous guy from Spaghetti Westerns. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
it.
So that's interesting. So it's that's an old London thing as well, isn't it? Just because you were always slightly scared of whatever. I was anyway. Yeah.
Just be aware of your surroundings.
Yeah. Yeah. Well. So the same geezer, really.
Yeah, I guess so. Speak to everybody. Yeah, mate. How you doing? All right? Little joke, serious, smiling. Yeah, just.
Paul Simonon, thank you so much.
Thank you. Very nice talking to you.
What a guy, and yes, I'm glad I've met one of my heroes. He's a true gent, a secret homebird, and a signed-up member of the Self-Preservation Society. Now, we're building a community here, and as you've got to the end, please subscribe and tell someone about it. Perhaps tell them the story about how the bass player from The Clash ended up as head chef in a prison for 2 weeks. I'm Rajan Datar. This was an Indio Media production, and until next time, travel safe.